Hello.
Hello, Michelle.
So we are back this week again. Last week, we did what started as a bit of an impromptu conversation because we had been getting some interesting inquiries, each of us, as well as some of the other practitioners, of people inquiring about SMGI, wanting to know a little bit more, whether it's because they wanted to do sessions themselves, friends had, or because they're interested in the upcoming training. So we had jumped on Zoom just to kind of have an impromptu way of going back and forth. And in doing that, it's gotten a really lovely response of people saying, what about this? What about this? So we decided that we would keep doing this for as long as it served to just kind of keep that conversation going. So one thing people said was, I don't even know who you people are. So we're going to start there this week. So we didn't even do that last week. So I am Michelle Michaela. I am a psychic medium, Akashic healer, teacher, and I'm also an SMGI certified practitioner. And I am here in this interview because I'm really passionate about how this work has changed me so deeply and how it's changed my clients. And I feel a true sense of purpose around helping get this modality into the hands of the people and the hearts and the minds of the people, the families that it's meant for. Prior to this work, I have a 22-year history in doing branding and video work more recently. And so I've started documenting your journey as well as our other practitioners' journeys, as well as the retreats. So this is sort of in just continuing that, bringing this forth to the world in the way that we best know how to, outside of people just experiencing it themselves. So welcome back. Here we are.
Thank you. And I am Gina Vance, and I am the developer of SMGI, Somatic Mindful Guided Imagery. And I developed it out of many experiences with wonderful teachers, wonderful healers, some wackadoo healers as well, some not so wonderful teachers, who all helped me to connect more clearly to what would work for people like me that had pretty severe PTSD, very highly defended, the slightest little hint of bossiness or judgment, shut everything down. So there are similarities within SMGI, but it's in its whole different bubble.
Yeah.
And before I've been doing this about 22 years as a quote unquote healer, supporting people with this protocol. And before that, I worked as a lighting engineer. And then it was just excruciating pain that brought me down and put me on a path to find out what needed to happen for me to get out of that pain. And took 5 years, met all those wonderful healers and teachers, and gathered pieces of the protocol that we now have today. And, you know, I'd like to say too that when I knew that I was going to be sharing this protocol with others, for a lot of years, I kind of worked with my kind of spiritual, intuitive, empathic, psychic hands behind my back, because I really didn't want it to be about my specialness. I wanted it to be something that was repeatable, that, you know, everyone's special. Of course, everyone has different qualities and talents and gifts and abilities to bring to this work. But that was something that was very important to me, was not to bring any extra bells and whistles in. If this was going to work, then it would work without any special extras. So with that said, it works brilliantly. And for people like you who are psychics, mediums, Akashic healers, then it beautifully blends with the work that you're already doing. And it can also be a standalone service that you can offer alongside of your other wonderful offerings.
Yes, one of the questions I often get is, if I don't have your same abilities, will I be able to be as successful as in being a practitioner? And the answer is such a resounding yes, that I will give a quick example of how it works with so many things even stripped away. It's that good. I did 3 sessions recently with a young man who's, I think, 15 years old. He speaks very little English. We did the sessions with him across the world in a dorm room at boarding school, speaking very little English, and his sister translating between the two of us. And it has had a profound effect on him. So it's like you strip away the exact language, you strip away all of these aspects of it, and the foundation is still there. And that key piece of ready, willing, and able. And then you add in a sister's love, who's so passionate about doing the best job she can to describe, and just watching the two of them, where she would say something and kind of giggle as she's saying it. And he's like, what? And she's like saying it again. So I'm just watching and still seeing the magic of this work, even when so many of the nuances were no longer present. The spirit, the energy, the frequency, and that true desire to let go of things and to heal and move into a new version is why it was still working so magnificently.
Beautiful.
So one of the things that we had talked about that's come up recently, as you know, themes seem to present themselves as far as what people are going through. I often see that in clients. I'll see like phases of, oh, everyone, this is happening right now, or something like that. And lately there's been a really big focus of people's bravery around looking at what they're referencing as addictions. And so I'd love for us to talk today about addiction. I can talk about how I've seen it from a spiritual perspective and why it feels like there's an epidemic of addiction. What I've seen that really is led, you know, how that's presented, what the choices have been before are different than what's available now, and really how SMGI has played into people's recovery. And I know that I've had a few people who've come to me to use it around recovery, but I know it's really a sweet spot for you, that many clients have come to have SMGI be their guiding light as they are entering recovery, or it kicks them into recovery when maybe they weren't quite sure yet how to interact, but had the strong desire. So tell me how you see all of this, the recovery, addiction, all of that, and the world of SMGI.
Well, the first thing that we don't do with SMGI is make anyone wrong. Right? Their soul knows what it is doing now. Their soul has always known what they were doing, engaging in whatever experience they were engaging in. And wow, what rich experience to get as an addict of whatever, of, you know, what people think of as serious or what people think of as silly. The whole gamut. It doesn't really matter. It's an opportunity for someone to experience what that's like and in their own being want to change it. That's what we're here. We're here not to fix broken people or make people that are bad good. We're here to help people change what they want to change and honor what their path of experience, whatever that's been. So if someone is brand new, newly sober, I really see the value of 12-step programs and group programs where they have a community of people that they're accountable to, that they can call in the middle of the night, 24/7, that they feel a sense of community with and love with and support with. And so that I've seen is really valuable for someone getting newly sober. And on the other end of kind of that spectrum are people that, they want to stop drinking, 2 or 3 glasses of wine every night.
Right.
For whatever their reasons are. They want to be more present for their people in their lives or their health, whatever their reasons are. So, and those people don't necessarily perceive themselves as addicted or addicts, and they don't necessarily perceive themselves as in recovery when they change that. So there's kind of both ends of the spectrum in our work, but I can tell you that I have so many clients that have been in Al-Anon and AA and various 12-step programs, all those ancillary programs that have had the community, that have done some work and want more. And one of my clients, who is a very popular sponsor in a 12-step program, when I was asking her, about how she perceived the value in this work, she said that it helped her to get more. And I asked her, more of what? And she said, more freedom. And for her, that's what she wants for those that she sponsors. And so as we're doing the work, not only is she getting more of the freedom that she desires, but she is able to use components of the work with those that she sponsors. And of course, I've seen many of the people that she sponsors, and you can be really at any stage of your journey. Sometimes I work with people that aren't in a recovery group, and yet they feel that what they're using is a problem and they want to change that. And so we just do the work to help them experience what needs to happen so that they can do that. And I've had people that have quote unquote relapsed, in our work together. So maybe we're working 6 sessions, and, in the second and third week, they have relapsed. It's all part of your experience on your way to where you're headed. And so when you're newly sober and you're in a program like that, it's much more, the boundaries are a little more rigid, right? Which it can be very, very helpful. It's like, and in the context of SMGI, it really is about honoring the soul's journey, honoring that person on their journey. Okay, right? So you are reporting that you've relapsed. How is that for you? And what do you want to be different, if anything? So the subtle but profound difference with this work is that it really relies on drawing forth that inner power of not only will, but desire. And of course, balance is optimum. So we want structures that support us, that are rigid enough so that we know we're not going to fall through the bottom. And there's very few places where you can be honored in whatever phase of your journey that you're in. And right. Even if that's perceived as bad. Yeah, so does that answer your question?
It does. And it, you know, in you talking about the 12-step programs, about a little over 9 years ago, I decided to remove alcohol from my life. It felt like I was using it as an escape regularly because I was so highly sensitive and I did not have enough tools. So I was using it as my filter of how to quiet my sensitivity, my now what I call, you know, my how I do my job, my abilities. But at the time it was like walking around with no skin on. I just did not have what was needed in order to be grounded and present. And so I used alcohol to self-soothe, to feel okay in the world, to feel more normal. Mm-hmm. And I decided to remove that because it felt like it was kind of starting to hijack my life a little bit as far as enjoying and being in that, hitting that escape hatch, or, you know, that leaving here. And so it stopped doing what it originally was meant to do and started to just kind of feel ick, like this isn't great. I'd never known anybody who'd gotten sober, although looking around me, you know, I would say that most of the people in my life had a pretty slippery relationship with different things: alcohol, cannabis, food, screen time, all kinds of stuff, you know. Mm-hmm. And so I did use the 12-step program to stop drinking because I was like, what else does one do at 5:30? And someone said, you go to a meeting. And I was like, I don't even know what that means. Like, I just didn't know. And so someone said, well, just try it out. And so I used it for like the first 90 days. It's called 90 and 90, where every day at 5:30, I would go to this meeting. And it was really lovely. You know, I didn't use the program long term. What they spoke about in the program didn't sound or resonate for me. A lot of the ways that and tools that they use just weren't a path I knew was going to be for me. But having something to do during that time frame of breaking a ritual of having a glass of wine or a cocktail at that time, it was really, really useful. Mm-hmm. And I really see now, had I had SMGI earlier on, I don't believe I would have ever even ended up in the situation of over relying on alcohol in the first place. I would have used those tools to go to that ideal good place. I would use those tools to resource those good feelings that we learn how to access, that we use as that pretty instantaneous, you turn inward and within 15 seconds, oh my God, it's like a whole new world. And it's in us. Mm-hmm. So I believe not only is it an extremely beautiful tool for those who are wanting to transition out of using things outside of themselves to self-soothe and redirect to using the things inside of them to get far more incredible results and feelings that are not only sustainable, but you can build on them. Yeah. And I do remember it was really hard for the first, 6-8 months of like really missing that juiciness, missing that reward, missing that feeling of I deserve this. I had a really hard day. I did all these things. I want that reward. And every time I start to go into an SMGI session myself, I get that same giddiness that I used to get as I was pouring that glass of wine. It's like, oh, I get to do this, and it's even more decadent when you're doing it with a facilitator. Mm. Recently you were doing a session for me and I remember just being like so excited as I laid down and I put my eye mask on, and I was just like, here we go, here we go. So I remember at the time when I did stop drinking, people said, you should consider meditation. And I was like, fuck you. Like, that's a horrible answer.
Mhm.
This feels like it is more of an instantaneous when you start to use these steps. And what's amazing about the steps is that we give them to the clients immediately. Here are the first 4 steps that you can start using from the moment you walk out this door. I have a recording on YouTube that people can use for the first 4 steps. I know you have a recording that you give to people, sheets of like, here's exactly how this works and why. We're not holding on tightly to those like some secret. We're sharing those freely with the world. So people can start to really experience essences and parts of it daily. It doesn't just have to be in between those sessions. Because that is the point, is how this permeates and moves into your way of living, and not just these 2-hour pockets of time.
Yeah. Yeah. And, the truth is, a few people we only see one time. That's more rare, but it happens.
Mhm.
And so, the aim is to send them off with whatever's most beneficial for them. Some people we might only see 3 times, once a year. And many people we will have ongoing work, just, 6-pack and 6 sessions and another 6 sessions, and
Mhm.
and until they have a break, and then continuing on. So the work is meant to be used on your own. The analogy that comes to mind for me most often is, if you're hiking and it's a pretty precarious hike, if you slip and fall, you want to know how to render yourself first aid. But not everyone needs to be a surgeon to go on a hike. So this is kind of like, spiritual, emotional, mind, body first aid. And though, those 4 essential steps that you were referring to, they are the easiest, most powerful and effective way I know to regulate the nervous system, or calm, settle, and stabilize the nervous system, not only of the person that's using them, but the other people in their proximity. So it contributes to goodwill among mankind, for sure. And I want to just bring into, when it comes to addiction in whatever form, and people have different ways of defining what that means. But essentially, if it's something that you're doing and you don't want to do it anymore, but you don't seem able to not do
Right.
it anymore. And there's essentially 2 things that addiction is being used to support a kind of balance or homeostasis with. And one, of course, is sensitivity, right? So the most sensitive people have a really challenging time managing all of that energetic information that they are experiencing in their own bodies. And many are perceiving it to be theirs. And so we haven't really been guided very well in our culture how to manage those kinds of sensitivities. It feels more like a curse. And then once we learn to manage those sensitivities, which we can do in SMGI, then we can turn it into a blessing. It's part of our superpowers. So super sensitivity on one side, but on the other side is disconnection from the body. So someone that lives in the mental field, someone, in their head. And so it takes actually, it's stressful to not be embodied. It's stressful to only be in the headspace. And so some people that, there's a lot of phrases for them: emotionally unavailable, or whatever the phrases are that are out there. But when someone uses a substance or an activity, it helps them to get out of just being locked in that headspace and more in their body and in ways that are attempts to bring balance. Because too much of anything, even too much of a good thing, it doesn't feel good and it doesn't work very well. Part of the philosophy of SMGI is, you know, because I have a lot of people come in that are on pharmaceuticals, whether it's antidepressants or anti-anxiety, and sometimes they apologize, or, you know, they're ashamed, or they want to get off, which, by the way, we don't tell anyone to get off of anything that's been prescribed to them. That's totally their choice. And we always encourage people to work with their prescribers regarding that. However, the philosophy of SMGI is, the analogy for me is a man with a large wound on his leg. He's walking with a crutch under one arm. And why would we want to kick the crutch out from beneath his arm when he has that bum leg? How about we help him heal that leg so he wants to happily throw the crutch away?
Yeah.
So,
Wow.
you know, people are doing the best they can to be humane, right? To calm their system, to bring some kind of balance and homeostasis so that they can be decent to the people in their lives, so that they can remain, you know, in their lives. So there's a lot of compassion that we bring in SMGI for the reasons. And of course, there's people like Gabor Mate, however you pronounce that, out there really doing wonderful work, talking about all the plethora of research that's available, and that most addiction is rooted in childhood trauma. So SMGI is the best trauma healing modality I know of. And one of the reasons that I understand it's so effective is because it's so gentle, it's so non-threatening, it's non-demanding, it develops a safely kind of held container in which a person can honor their experiences. Whatever they've done, whatever's been done to them, it's all healable. But the number one thing that has to happen before it can be healed is for it to be honored. A lot of modalities with good intentions are in a hurry to get the person from the uncomfortable place into the happy place. Only happiness, only positivity. And so it doesn't really honor what the person is still carrying around in their psyche that is incomplete, that needs to be honored to be complete, and their own self-directed journey. What direction are they drawn to, rather than what we learned we should be or should be doing.
Yeah, there's another thing that I've heard people reference when they come to me and they say, I'm doing this behavior and I really want to stop. Another reason that they say is, I'm bored. I think life's boring. They're like, everything's the same every day. It's the same exact schedule. And when I sit down to have that glass of wine or whatever it is that they're having, a chocolate cake, whatever, they're like, it's exciting. The sensations in my body that it brings up is this jolt of life force energy, or this moment of this feeling of bliss. And it is one of the things that is so interesting about SMGI that I have not seen in other modalities, is the inner world, the imagination, the creativity, the places that it takes you to can often be so fantastic, and people are surprised by them. I hear people say, I have a terrible imagination. I'm really analytical. I'm someone who's always in their head. Is this going to work for me? Or I don't know how to go to good places. I don't know how to dream. I don't know how to imagine. And so it feels like it's almost like I wouldn't, it is SMGI are tools, but in a way it's a door that just gets opened for you. You almost don't even have to learn how to do it. It just unfolds. And I see people being so surprised by that time and time again. And they say, you know, I recently had a client who was, I think, 87, and she's like, where has this been for my whole life? I'm bummed I just found it at 87. So it's like, I do think there is a truth of this mundane worker bee energy out there where people are just drudging along and really using whatever tools are in front of them. And sometimes the tools in front of them aren't ones that lead to great breakthroughs. They're ones that end up feeling, you know, like they're making their lives smaller, less interesting, and now they've got a quote unquote problem on their hands because now they're dependent on whatever it was. Can you speak a little to this like world of SMGI, this how it's like this place that they go to, this inner landscape from the right side of their brain? How is it that it so easily turns on something that people have not had access to inside of themselves for most of their life?
Any happy, well-loved, safe child is naturally imaginative. And in SMGI, we're just helping people to connect or reconnect to what's already in them.
Yeah.
So no matter how, you know, shut down we have become or defended, it's still in there. And it's, when you create the right conditions, it just like naturally comes right out. And it's not to say that there aren't people that are a little more stop and start, wait, what is this? Wait. And that's fine, we can work with that. But, you know, the analogy that comes to mind when you're talking about boredom is being on the deck of a ship, just laying there in the sun as the breeze goes by, the water goes by, there's all this sky, and you know, you're not doing anything necessarily, but that's an experience where you can enjoy the experience of being in your body, perhaps, but whatever a person likes to do, whatever they enjoy, whether it's swimming or walking in nature or being among flowers, whatever someone enjoys, it's everyone has something. It's always in you, what you're drawn to, what uplifts and nourishes you. Now, some of us, because of our life schedules, we are disconnected from our natural state. And so part of what SMGI does is help us reconnect to those natural states of experience where we can just enjoy being at peace, experiencing tranquility, serenity, and letting our biology have that experience that for whatever reasons we're not able to have in our outer world lives yet. The more you do it in the inner world, the more it starts happening in the outer world. And the other thing, you know, that I want to say about boredom is Carla McLaren in her genius work around emotions will tell us that, you know, that's under the umbrella of anger. And so it's like when we don't have the freedom to do what we want to do that we enjoy, that nourishes us and energizes us and uplifts us, then there's a kind of protective boundary that we create from our healthy anger, which is just like, you know, it looks like, but there's a little, there's a little contempt there when someone's bored, right? Right. So one of that leads to the courage it takes to actually live the life that we want to live. So in when you're moving through your inner world in SMGI, not only are you getting to experience in your biology what it feels like to be anything but bored, whatever that might look like for you. Usually there is some peace and tranquility, even if it's very short-lived. And then the adventure unfolds, and yet you feel supported, you feel safe, and it creates a courage in you so that you can take bold actions in your inner world. And then this supports us having the courage in our outer world, in our relationships, in our relationship with ourselves, in what we say yes to and what we say no to. So then the boredom can disappear. And we can enjoy whatever our circumstances tend to be. And that doesn't mean that if you're in a job that you hate, or maybe it's a job you love, but you're getting a sense that it's time to transition out of that and to do something different with what you carry, then ideally you want to be supported in that transition where you're not onto the next thing yet. You haven't left this thing yet. And how can you get the most out of this and be at the most peace while you're transitioning, unless being at no peace is what you need in order to get you to do what ultimately is going to serve you in more satisfying ways. So that's another piece, is whatever your unwanted experience is, which usually unwanted experiences connected to addictions, some kind of pain, some kind of fear, that we want to calm it down, or we want to redirect our attention to something that's more engaging, because nobody's taught us how to resolve those kinds of pains and fears. They're like phantoms that are coming from the inside of us. And sometimes it's so reflexive and automatic. We reach for our addictive substance or activity without even consciously recognizing that there's some kind of discomfort that is driving that.
Yeah. It's interesting also, people that carry often shame around what they see as their addictions. And it originated really as them self-soothing, right? It was them reaching for something to really bring resolve, or to help them with something, and they didn't have more appropriate ways for that self-soothing. But it did originate from a part in them that knew that something needed to be different than what it was in that moment. And I do love how SMGI does not pathologize and doesn't make you wrong. I know that when I first decided to stop drinking, I was like, I feel like I need some support in this. So I was looking for a therapist, but as I was reading these different websites, and it was like somebody who's dealing in addictions, but they didn't feel like they were really who I was looking for. It wasn't as cut and dry for me as that. It was not as just, who can get me sober? I mean, when I stopped drinking, and I haven't looked back. It just wasn't like I needed something so extreme. And I certainly did not identify with this. Call yourself this, say that you've messed up all these ways and this is all you got left. But like the conceding did not resonate for me at all around saying I'm this thing and therefore X, Y, and Z. I understand that for some people that is their freedom. Releasing and claiming that is them, that feels amazing to them. And for those people, that's fantastic. But there are so many people now who I think are choosing to remove things from their life, but they really need help in how to go about doing it, because they don't really know how to take these deeply embedded behaviors that are now not feeling good to them anymore, but they don't really have any solid redirects that are long lasting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and it seems important to point out that the other side of that self-soothing coin is self-fortifying, right? We've seen it in almost every movie where the cowboy throws back the shot of whiskey or whatever. So social anxiety, people will use their substance before they have to do whatever they're called to do. So there's that courage again, right? The courage that is needed, because it doesn't mean once we are in a good balance for our situation, that we're never going to experience pain or fear or uncomfortable things. But we can have access to courage and a greater capacity to hold the tension of discomfort long enough to remedy it. And we've kind of been taught to believe that, there's no remedy, just stop it. The whole abstinence thing, it's, we understand in SMGI, and it's not unique to SMGI though, but many of the mind-body therapies recognize very clearly what you push against, you make stronger. So it's tricky. It's a tricky balance between having a very solid structure that says, these are the clear rules, these are the clear boundaries, don't cross these lines. That can create a great sense of safety and belonging, and it can be very beneficial. And then it's just like when you're a child, those things can be very beneficial and very comforting. Children love boundaries, right? And as we grow and develop, then oftentimes we want to expand beyond those boundaries, and we want to have more agency, and we want to create on our own. And so that's not to say that it might not be a particular sacred soul path of someone to go, into a 12-step group and stay there for the rest of their lives in the same way that they came into it. Perfect for them. For people that want to go beyond that, but they're not sure how, and some of the messages don't really resonate with them, then they can explore in a way that doesn't pathologize them or what they've done or the choices that they've made, and recognizes them as a powerful, creative soul that can create miracles. And, occasionally we reference the saints, who evidently those people got up to all kinds of crazy business before they were saints, right? So, another way to say that is people that are initiated into intense experience, usually once they alchemize that into something valuable, they have tremendous value to offer to the world. So it's kind of like the inner parent that wants to protect the kid from all experience to keep them safe. Like, don't do that, don't do that, don't do that, don't do that. And then we're fortunate with our clients, we're not their parent. It's like we can just honor all the experience that they have engaged in and support them in how they want to change that if they do, and where they're headed, what they want to create.
Beautiful. And if you had to choose, if someone who's considering changing behaviors, whether they want to call it getting sober or removing something out of their life, would you say that SMGI is a good starting point to get to the desires underneath? Or would you say that it's more something that can support you after you've are already on that path?
Yeah, it's a great question, and there's not one answer. So for some people, they just never get anywhere near a 12-step program. And I mean, look at things like, screen time addiction, right? Maybe there are programs for that. If there are, I don't know about it. And with all the sleep science now available, people are recognizing, yeah, it is probably messing up my sleep, and my sleep is lack of sleep is messing up my life. So it just depends. So if someone is newly sober. If someone is actively engaging in their addiction, then I ask them to come to session sober. So
Mhm.
if we're in session, they're not on their screen while we're in session, or they're not using their substance while we're in session. Now, sometimes that doesn't happen. So we work with it. Okay.
Mhm.
You know what? No matter how messed up someone is, their soul knows. So
Yeah.
if they knock on our door, if they call us, if they reach out to us, then there's probably something we have to offer them to support them on their journey. That's not exclusive of a group program.
Mhm.
So in general, I'll answer in general with addictive substances that can really be detrimental to people's lives. Much of the time when they're brand new sober, their emotional development hasn't been able to continue and blossom like it would have if they had the support they needed that would serve them in a way better than the addictive substance or activity. So sometimes they're not ready, they're not willing, they're not able to go even into their body, because the first thing we do with SMGI is attention in the body, because it's a resource, because all the pleasure can be accessed there, all the healing can be accessed there, the remedy for everything, it starts right there with the body and the pleasure. But many of us associate the body with pain and terror. So we don't want to move our attention into the body at all. And sometimes when we do, we'll feel the pain and the old traumas and we'll feel overwhelmed. And then we'll want to use our addictive substance or activity.
Mhm.
Now we can work with that in SMGI, and I do with people. And so, for instance, a couple of weeks ago, I was guiding a woman in her inner world, and she connected to a younger part of herself that had experienced very harsh and difficult things. And the client said, I want to numb out. I want to use my substance to numb out right now. And I told her, you can do that. You absolutely can do that. And before you do, would you be willing to, with your helper, to follow that feeling to what it's connected to, so you can either clear it out or rescue that part of you that's holding those feelings of overwhelm inside of you? And so she was willing. And of course, she'd had some experience with this work. So the more you do this work, the more willing you are to keep exploring with it, because you develop a sense of trust that you ultimately are going to be okay. This is happening in the inner world of your imagination. You feel it in your physiology for sure. And so then there was a lovely little rescue mission that she did, and she was very happy that she did. But it's not our job to say, no, don't do that. Let's do this thing to get you over this hump. If it works temporarily, there's always some resistance in there when it doesn't come from the agency of the individual.
Beautiful. When you were talking, it reminded me of two different clients that I've had who've come for wanting help with what they called sugar addiction, about how the same time every night, little later in the evening, their cravings would kick in and they would go eat a cookie, piece of cake, whatever it is. They did not consider that this was taking over their lives, but it still felt like an annoyance and something they have struggled with, as they called it, struggled their whole life. And so in both of these cases, what they would do inside their journeys is they would go to these magical places like Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, and they would drink from the chocolate river or be part of the chocolate fondue, or they would, in their inner world, have that piece of chocolate cake. And what it was doing was it was really bringing, I don't know if it's dopamines, that it was really surging those same that jolt of energy, that it was creating the chemical response in their body that they were liking. So it ended up being that they would use SMGI in the evenings at the same time, just dropping into the 4 steps, not a full with me or anything. And it ended up creating, I'm imagining, these new neural pathways that they could turn inward to produce the same feelings by going into the feeling state and the imaginal realm as had they physically done it. What they liked about that was all of a sudden now they're starting to lose a little bit of weight because that was the desire of theirs. They're sleeping a little bit better, just really getting all of a sudden this new life because of how proud they were of themselves, of stopping something that they had suffered from childhood. And also what it was linked to was in SMGI, them discovering that when they were children, the restriction that had been put on them, that they weren't allowed to have that as children. And that's kind of what created this pendulum swing in the other direction of now treating themselves to something they weren't able to have as kids. What do you think of this, using SMGI to sort of go into some of these more indulgent behaviors? What's your thought on that?
It spontaneously happens when people are moving around in their inner world. And to me, it's like the 2 sides of the coin I was referring to earlier, the soothing, but also the courage, the encouragement. So oftentimes, when we crave things that we don't want to, there is that piece of soothing. And so that's the work to clear the clutter or rescue the part that is feeling not feeling the sweetness of life or whatever it is related to. But the other piece that will naturally spontaneously come is what you're referring to, where they experience a version of themselves who is without that. And the more they get to experience that, the more that becomes their reality, that maybe they were separate from, or it was buried or hidden. And so it becomes their biological reality. And here's the thing, is that now they have a choice, right? They can go into the part of me that needs soothing, or they can go in the part of me that has a fullness, that has an ease, right? And it doesn't mean we want to ignore the part that needs soothing. However, those are like inner allies. Those are versions of us that are potent powers that help us to then rescue the parts that are suffering, that are creating pain and fear in the background of our psyche. So one of the great things about SMGI is that as the guide, we don't have to determine, okay, let's see, you want to quit sugar. So what we're going to do is we're going to take you to your future successful self. You're going to experience that in your body. And after you do that, then you're going to follow the pain to clear the clutter and rescue the parts. It's up to the client's inner wisdom. So they might not get to what you're talking to until several sessions later, because something else needs their attention in a higher priority. That's a beautiful thing, that the responsibility isn't ours to try to determine that, where they need to go and in what order. And, in the early years when I'd learned that it was our responsibility to decide what needs to happen and where they need to go, that took some courage, just to allow the client's own inner wisdom to direct the journey. And lo and behold, wow, it seems to get results more permanently, more quickly, more easily.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. That feels to me like it covers everything that I was hoping and desiring we did around this topic. It's almost like there's little whispers of people not wanting to say, I love my whatever in the evening, or my indulgent screen time, or my cookie with my coffee in the morning, whatever it is. And I love this sort of liberating experience that people can have, and then also interact with these behaviors in new ways where there's sort of permission granted. And from that place, it's easier, it feels like, to make changes if you want to.
Yeah. Years and years ago, I read in some book, the psychotherapist was working with a mother that was very kind of high strung. And the mother was upset because her daughter was chubby. And this is like 20 years ago, I read this. And the psychotherapist told the mother, asked the mother, what's her favorite food? M&Ms. All right. I want you to let her have as many M&Ms as she wants. What? Yep. That's the homework. And so this little girl drug around a pillowcase of M&Ms for a week or 2 weeks. And then she was like over it. And I love that story because, you know, wherever there's lack, whenever there's no, then it's like saying, here, don't touch this. It's like, we want to touch it. Like, what'll happen when I touch it? And so, yeah, there can be this fullness within us where other things don't control us anymore. And we don't have this driven nature and it's a part of us. It's a part of us that's driving those. It's not who you are. It's not what you are. Right. And so if you want to call yourself an alcoholic, okay. That's not how I perceive you. I perceive you as a valiant soul on an intense journey of experience in this crazy, mixed up, violent, beautiful world. But if whatever you want to call yourself, you get to call yourself. And however you want to identify, that's okay with me.
Right. Beautiful.
And let me be clear, nothing against any program or modality that you get benefit from. It's all part of your rich experience. And it's all part of the rich experience that you bring to those people that are involved in that modality.
Yeah. All right. Thank you. As
Pleasure.
always.
Yeah.
And I'm sure I'll see you again here soon.
Okay. Anytime.
All right. Take care.
You
Bye.
too. Bye.